My name is Alum, and as spring semester mayor, I have the honor and pleasure of welcoming everyone to this year's Outstanding Alum of the Year award ceremony. I came to Springs in 10th grade. In my past 3 years, I've had my fair share of Springs traditions. Meet the classics, Leg Day, D-Day, struggling through AP Euro, graduation, Springs Altamont games, even the award ceremony that you're watching right now. It's all a part of Springs traditions. It's within these shared, universal Springs experiences that I, and I'm sure many others, have found community. Through the years, these traditions have allowed me not only to connect with current students, but also to the students that came before me. These traditions have allowed me to feel like I'm part of something bigger. In many conversations I've had with alumni, be it the parents of current students or friends who graduated the year before, I love that our shared experiences connect us. I'm comforted by the knowledge that while some things may change, much more stays the same. The values and ethos Springs embodies and seeks to instill in its students endure. Lifelong learning, independent thinking, moral courage, participation, respect and regard for yourself and others. These are central tenets of a Springs education. Every year and all over the world, we see Springs graduates realize these values to their full potential. I'm inspired by our alumni who have all gone on to do great and impactful things within their chosen fields, and beyond confident that my experiences at Springs will have empowered me to do the same. An education at Springs more than prepares me for the world ahead. To our alumni present, thank you for being here and welcome home. Now, please welcome Mr. Schamberger on stage for his opening remarks. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Springs. It is a great day to be part of the Springs community. Before we get started with the formal presentation of the Alumni of a Year Award, I do want to give a quick shout out to the girls soccer team for their big win against Altamont last night. And to the boys team who took down John Carroll last night. And also, a hearty congratulations to Elise Picard for making the state meet in track and field, and we'll be heading down to Gulf Shores. Better yet, congratulations to all of our athletes this spring for the huge success and the growth that you have demonstrated throughout the course of the season. I've enjoyed watching you compete. Today is a special day for Springs as we welcome home members of our alumni community. We have all grown weary of the limitations of the pandemic and what it has put on our campus community and the restricted access that we've imposed on members of our extended family. I'm thrilled that we are inching closer to normal, and I'm excited to welcome back to campus several members of the alumni community. Callan Thistle, class of 2001, who serves as the Alumni Council President. Claire Edwards, class of 1989, who serves on the Alumni Council and also co-chaired the Outstanding Alum Award Committee. And then to our special guest today, David O., class of 1987, and his wife, Bryn. Thank you for being with us today. I also want to welcome via Zoom the members of the Board of Governors who are joining us today, as well as the other members of the Alumni Council who invest so generously of their time and talent into this community. So thank you for being with us today. In moments like today of celebration, I'm reminded that our individual successes are in fact shared by all those around us. We are part of something bigger than just ourselves. We are the products of our families, our friends, our teachers, our coaches, and our mentors. We all stand upon the shoulders of those that came before us. We are all made better by the relationships that we enjoy with one another here at Springs and the network of past students who continue to share with us throughout their lives. This has been true from the school's founding and will be true long after you graduate. I encourage you to think about this today. but also throughout your life's journey. We are here to celebrate the accomplishments of one member of our alumni community, just as we do each and every year. Accomplishments and a life journey made fuller and richer by those who have supported this year's recipients throughout their time here at Springs and throughout their time in life, at each step and stage of his life journey. I certainly know, having had lunch with this year's recipient, that David was made better and richer for his Springs experience. He shared fond memories about his time on campus as both a day student and a boarder. With that said, I invite Claire Edwards, co-chair of the Outstanding Alumni Award Committee, to the podium to present this year's award.
Good afternoon. I am Claire Edwards, class of 1989, and I serve on the Indian Springs School Alumni Council. Each year, the Alumni Council selects a recipient for the Outstanding Alum Award given to a Springs graduate who has made an outstanding contribution to their field and or community. This year's recipient is David O., class of 1987. David O. is a principal systems engineer at NASA's Jet Propulsion Laboratory, who has worked on missions to the Moon, Mars, asteroid belt, and beyond. David joined JPL in 2003, led the cross-cutting systems engineering team that designed and tested the avionics, thermal, and communication systems for the Curiosity Mars rover, and was the rover's lead flight director through launch, cruise, and early surface operations. David received an SCD in Aeronautics and Astronautics from MIT in 1997, and bachelor's degrees in both astronautics and music from MIT in 1991. Today, David is the Project Systems Engineering Manager for one of the newest additions to NASA's Discovery mission portfolio, Psyche, Journey to a Better World. This mission will use electric propulsion to visit a type of world never before explored, a 200-kilometer diameter asteroid mainly made of metal. The mission launches in August 2022. David graduated from Indian Springs School in 1987, where he was a day student for 3 years and a boarding student for 2 years. Welcome, David.
Good afternoon, everybody. Well, I hearken from LA, and it's Oscar season, so I know that when you give an award speech, you're supposed to start with lots of thank yous. So I'm going to start with some thank yous here. First, I want to thank the school and the Alumni Council for inviting me here today to accept this award. It is an honor. It really is an honor to join the many distinguished alumni who received this award before me. And I looked at the list, and I think I saw 2 others from my class, the class of 1987, so I guess it was a good year. I hope it was, and it really is an honor to be named with them. I also want to thank my family, both my wife, who is sitting behind me, and my kids for supporting all the work that I've done through these years. And especially want to thank my parents as well, who taught me the value of knowledge and of an education, and made the sacrifices necessary to let me attend Indian Springs School so many years ago. I also want to thank all the teachers at Indian Springs who made all of this possible. And I don't want to try and name names because there are too many of them and I'll leave some out. Well, I'll make an exception. I'll name 2 names because I think Dr. Lacoste and Dr. Cooper are here somewhere, or maybe you're out here somewhere. So there, I see one over there. And I do want to thank them so much for all I learned, for teaching all the stuff they taught me that makes this possible. Because Indian Springs is a remarkable and a unique place. I graduated from here in 1987, as I said, so I haven't been a student here in a long time. I'm going to start by saying that. I hope that the school is what I remember it to be, and better. Because I know no institution is perfect. But I do hope that this is still a place where people are taught, where students are taught that knowledge is valued, curiosity is encouraged, and the students are respected by each other and by the faculty and by the staff here. I also know that you guys are all stuck here listening to me at the end of this, so I'm supposed to give you some advice, so I think I'm going to go ahead and do that, but I promise I'll try and keep it brief. Let me start by asking, just so I can get a lay of the land, how many people here have heard of the Perseverance Mars rover? Can you raise your hand if you've heard of it? Oh, look at that. That is very good. Okay. The Perseverance Mars rover landed on the surface of Mars just 2 months ago. And it's there to collect samples which eventually will be returned to Earth for scientific analysis to see if Mars once had biosignatures or once could have supported life as we know it. And most recently it's been there dropping off and flying the first helicopter to fly on another planet. It's a remarkable spacecraft. And I can only say I worked on that spacecraft for a very short period of time. But I did work for a long time on its predecessor, the Curiosity Mars rover. I worked on that rover for 7 years, and it landed in 2012. The Curiosity rover and the Perseverance rover are both nuclear-powered rovers, the size of a small SUV. The Curiosity rover went to Mars with a mission, which was to determine if Mars was ever habitable. That is, to determine if it ever could have or could today support life as we know it here on Earth. Now that mission was a success in the sense that it actually did determine that Mars could have supported life, was habitable. It had the ability to support life as we know it here on Earth millions of years ago. It had running water on it. It had warmth. It had all the organic chemicals necessary to support life. And that in and of itself is a remarkable achievement. Now, I worked on that rover for 7 years, as Claire said. I was a systems engineer and the lead flight director in flight. Now that rover was a remarkable achievement, I would say. As part of just begin to do its mission, it had to be able to enter the Martian atmosphere and slope from 13,000 miles an hour to 0 over the course of just 7 minutes. And to do that, it had to deploy a heat shield and a parachute and a rocket pack and a never-before-used device called a sky crane to lower it to the surface of Mars. And it had to do it completely autonomously without human intervention because it's so far away from Earth. And it had to work the first time because the gravity on Mars is only a third of that on Earth, so we can't actually run a landing sequence here on Earth. It has to run all by itself. Now, the team was successful in doing this, and there are lessons to be learned from this. And these lessons apply not just to the things we do in space, but to basically any of the hard problems we try to solve as humans, be they in space or here on Earth. And I think as all of you know, today's world is full of big problems to solve. It's full of technological problems, social problems, economic problems, some problems that are all three of those things together. And I know that some of you, in a few years, will get the opportunity to try to solve some of these big problems for all of humankind. So what I want to do is talk today about 3 quick lessons that I learned from the work that we did on the Curiosity rover in trying to solve these big and difficult problems. Because I think these lessons will apply to the things that you do when you get a chance to solve these big problems in the future. And the first thing I want to talk about is the value of curiosity itself, not the rover, the value of being curious. Now I remember Dr. Cooper, when I was taking his European history class, used to talk about the value of seeking knowledge for the sake of knowledge and learning for the sake of learning. And first of all, it's only after I left Springs that I realized how rare that philosophy is. And second, it's after Springs that I realized how much I love that philosophy. Knowledge for the sake of knowledge and learning for the sake of learning. But let me refine it a bit to make it a little more directly practical and say, my advice is to be curious. Be ferociously curious about the world around you. Look at it and ask lots of questions. You as young people in particular have a license to ask questions, to ask why things are the way they are. And what I encourage you to do is to go and get the answers. And I don't mean Google the answers or watch a YouTube video about the answers. I mean really dig deep. Because when you're trying to solve any of these big complex problems, it's critical that you go beyond the surface, that you go beyond the soundbite, that you dig deep to really understand what's going on and not take for granted just what somebody assumes is the way something is, or assumes or thinks is the way it's always been. So dig deep and take the time to find out why things are really the way they are. Because you never know which little bit of knowledge you happen to have learned in the past will at some point become suddenly relevant to solving some big problem in the future. As you may have heard earlier, I have both a music degree and an aerospace degree. You would be amazed at how much of what I learned in music actually applies to the work I do today as a systems engineer in aerospace engineering. And that's because science and engineering, which are extremely important, are really built around the idea that you take problems and you break them down, you decompose them into smaller pieces so that you can get to a problem which can be solved and then you solve it. But systems engineering, which is what you need to build spacecraft or solve these big problems, is about taking all these pieces and bringing them back together. And that actually turns out is what looking at the analysis of music is. Music, when you look at musical pieces, is all about taking a holistic approach, taking all the pieces, the chord progressions, the notes, the people who are playing, the instrumentalists, and bringing them all together to create a beautiful whole. That's what system engineering is about too. And that's what it takes to solve big problems, because these big problems that we have today are not things that can be solved by just a simple problem, a simple math problem, or one person working alone. You have to have the ability to take that holistic approach and bring it together. Again, all of that starts with being curious about the world around you, learning everything you can, and then striving to combine what you learn with your talents, and taking that to try and make the world a better place. The second thing I want to talk about is innovation, and in particular, once you've learned what you have and you know what needs to change, innovate, and innovate without fear. One of Jake Hill's unofficial mottos is to dare mighty things. What that means is that big accomplishments, be they doing something which has never flown before on another planet, or just trying to change the status quo because things have always been this way, it requires taking big risks. That sky crane that we used to land on Mars had never flown before, but we flew it anyway and we succeeded. And if you want to change things, you have to be willing to take big ideas and try and apply them and take big risks in doing that. You won't always know that they're going to work. So don't be afraid to try these new things. And don't be afraid to fail. Before the sky crane worked on Mars, many different elements of it were tested on the Earth, and many of them failed and were rebuilt and redone again. That ability to learn from failure, and learn from successes, by the way, to take all those things and learn from it, is what propels you forward and makes sure that your failures push you forward rather than pull you back. So the third thing I want to end on is probably the most important, and that is to learn to collaborate. Because no big problem, climate change, landing on Mars, achieving social equality, no big problem can be solved by a single person working alone. So it's important that you learn how to work in teams. It's important that you learn how to be a contributor, to be a part of a team. It's important that you learn how to communicate with others so they understand what you're thinking and you understand what they're thinking. And it's important eventually to learn how to lead people, to get people striving towards a common goal, no matter how hard it is, so they can work together to solve it. And most importantly, it's important to learn to build inclusive teams. Build teams where one person's weakness is offset by another person's strength. Seek deliberately to find people who offset your weaknesses to help you. And seek to create an environment where everyone is comfortable contributing their best. That's what an inclusive environment really is. The Curiosity rover had hundreds of people working from around the world with different backgrounds, nationalities, races, and religions. I can say without a doubt that our diversity was our strength, and our diversity is our strength today. And it's by working with others who have different ideas and different backgrounds, and we can bring all of these ideas together to solve the big problems that face humanity. So the education that you receive at Indian Springs is more than just a list of facts. What stays with me later, I have to say, is not the vocabulary that I learned in Latin class in my third year of taking it. Most of that I've forgotten. But what I did learn about was about critical thinking and about how to solve problems. And that education is invaluable. And I think you are all getting that now. So take that education, take advantage of it to find and solve the big problems around you. So be ferociously curious, innovate without fear, and collaborate with others to leave the world a better place than what you found it. Because whether we're landing on Mars or solving big problems here on Earth, we can solve these problems if we work together. Thank you again for honoring me today. Questions?
Do you mind answering this question?
Sure.
We've had some questions that have been posed for David, and he's going to spend a little bit of time responding to those questions.
Okay, I see I have a list of questions here, a short list. The first question is, what was it like applying for a job at NASA? Applying for a job at NASA is awfully like applying for any other job. So actually, after I graduated from college, I went to work in the aerospace industry on commercial satellites at a company called Space Systems Around in Silicon Valley. That's a company that builds the big satellites that carry DirecTV and Sirius Satellite Radio and CNN and ESPN. I actually spent 7 years working there in the commercial industry, learning about spacecraft and how they really work on top of the education that I'd had. That gave me the practical knowledge I needed so that when I could go and then apply for a job at NASA, I had the background and the knowledge necessary to be able to take an engineering position at JPL. So in that sense, I think applying for a job at NASA is like applying for any other job. You build a background, you build a resume, and you get to know people, and then you interview and whatnot. But it takes practice and persistence to get there, and I think anybody who's really determined should take a shot at it and try and get there, because it's really the best work. It's such a fun job, getting to work on exploring other planets. Another question I see here, what does your average day look like? Is it a lot of math or just paperwork and stuff? That's a good question. In the job that I do, as I mentioned, I'm a systems engineer. I lead a systems engineering team that's trying to build a spacecraft, the Psyche spacecraft. Most of my day now is actually not sitting at a desk. Well, first of all, we're under COVID. So most of my day is doing Zoom meetings, like 35 hours a week. It's a lot, too much. But in normal times, my day is actually a lot of meeting with people and looking at people's analyses and ideas and trying to determine what's best, and then helping people collaborate with each other. Engineering is part of that, but awful lot of it is actually about doing this leadership and collaboration and communication. So when you first enter an engineering position, you might spend 60% of your time doing analysis, but if you're doing leadership work, you'll spend 90% of your time doing communication and 10% doing stuff. So it's certainly not just sitting at a desk in a corner by myself. Everything is collaborative, because all of these big spacecraft, or big problems, these big technical problems we deal with, involve hundreds of people working together and collaborating. Another question on here is rocket science as hard as they say it is? Yes and no. Space is hard because it's unforgiving, because it is an environment where if you make a mistake, things go wrong very quickly, and it's very easy to lose a spacecraft or whatnot in that sense. But space and engineering are easy in the sense that they are kind of the ultimate fair broker. The laws of nature are fixed, and as long as you don't break them, you will be okay. I actually think solving many of our social problems and economic problems are harder, because the target keeps changing, as opposed to a technological problem where the target is known, and yes, if you fail, you'll lose it, but at least you know what the rules of the game are. All of these problems are hard in their own way, and I think we need smart people to solve all of them. As I said, really, economic, social, technological problems, they're all different, they're all hard, and they all cry out to be solved by smart people and talented people. The last question I have here is from Mr. Belzer, and it's a longer one. It says, I frequently have this discussion with students that they are very interested in pursuing technological fields, and usually with little interest in history, English, or languages. Since you are someone that has been very successful in a technical field, thank you for saying that, would you please comment on how important it was for you to continue to pursue studies in the humanities while at Springs and after Springs? How did it benefit you? This is a great question. I think I already told you one of my answers, right? There you are. That it's amazing how much I learned in getting a music degree actually applies in the work that I do. Okay, so that should tell you something about the importance of the humanities. But I think there are several different ways I can answer this one. So one is I took 6 years of French, 5 years of French at Indian Springs, and then 15 years later, I worked on a spacecraft in France, in Toulouse, with a whole team of people there, and I could speak French. And that was invaluable on a team where most of the people couldn't speak the other person's language. So, languages? Yes, check, very important. Another answer I'll give, though, is that you would be amazed at a place like JPL. At a place like JPL, there are, I'm going to dare say, a lot of smart people. And being smart there is not a differentiator. I'm almost never the smartest person in the room when we're in a meeting. There are, in almost any meeting anybody goes to, they can point to 2 other people in the room who are smarter than them. Being smart is not a distinguisher there, and is not how you get leadership positions there. It's all about communication. It's all about presentation. It's all about collaboration. Because you can just start by assuming everybody's smart, right? But can they do all of these other things? Do they have what the engineers call soft skills to be able to work effectively in that environment? There was a class I took here by Mr. Stegner, which was called Expository Writing. I don't know if there's still an equivalent class, but it was basically a class that taught you how to take an idea and boil it down in 3 paragraphs and publish it at the time like a newspaper article. You know, that skill, to be able to take a complex idea and boil it down into 3 paragraphs, is basically every complicated email I write to the team, or to other people who are outside the team, right? That is like the super important skill to be able to take that and communicate it. So that is super, super important. By the same token, presentation skills, the ability to get up and speak like this or present PowerPoint decks or whatnot to be able to explain space missions and whatnot, that all comes from performance skills, from the music, right? Being someone who got up and had to do a solo in choir and forgot the words in a concert, after going through that, getting up and pitching a PowerPoint deck doesn't seem that bad anymore. It's a lot easier, actually, when you actually know the material on the screen and you can improvise, and not when you have to hit a certain set of words and a certain set of feet. I mean, that's just a couple of illustrations of just how important those skills are. And I will go back and say, you know, I started with like knowledge for the sake of knowledge, learning for the sake of learning, and then I contradicted myself because I gave you a whole bunch of reasons to learn it anyway. Reasons, right? Well, I still think knowledge for the sake of knowledge and learning for the sake of learning are important. That's why we explore. That's why we go out and we look at asteroids and the moon and other planets and stuff like that. But I also promise you that all of that knowledge will come in useful in ways that you cannot imagine now. So yeah, I think the broader education you can get and the more you can build up on all of these skills, not just the technical ones, the better. Is that the last question? Okay, then I think I am done.
Please stand for the Indian Springs alma mater. To Indian Springs, our alma mater, lift your voices high, in praises ringing ever stronger, mounting to the sky. O Indian Springs, our alma mater true. To thee we show our loyalty, in noble deeds we do.
If everyone can once again join me in congratulating David O on his award this afternoon. David, as head of school, I can attest to the fact that your Springs experience is alive and well, and that there is an abundance of ferocious curiosity here within our student body. So some things will never change about this place, even as buildings do. With that said, everyone have a wonderful afternoon and enjoy the great weather. If you would like to come say hello to Dr. O, you are welcome to come up to Engle Terrace here and do so.